There are moments in life when you can feel it stirring beneath the surface, when something inside your spirit begins to whisper that the ordinary season you've been walking through is about to give way to something extraordinary. And today I want you to lean closer and listen carefully, because this is not entertainment. This is not empty noise filling space. This is a call that reaches into the quiet corners of your heart and reminds you that you were not created to drift through despair, but to stand in expectation, because God is about to do a miracle in your life, and you must be ready. Ready in your faith, ready in your patience, ready in your willingness to believe when circumstances argue against belief. And perhaps you have grown tired of waiting. Perhaps you have seen doors close and prayers linger in silence. Perhaps you have stood in the night wondering if heaven still hears your voice. Yet even now, I tell you, there is purpose unfolding beyond your sight, because faith has never depended on visible evidence. It has always thrived in the unseen realm, where trust walks before understanding. And I speak today with the urgency of someone who has witnessed souls lifted from ashes into glory, because history is filled with testimonies of those who endured drought before rainfall, darkness before dawn, loss before restoration. And you are not exempt from that sacred pattern. You are part of it. And somewhere within your struggle, a preparation is happening that you cannot yet measure. Because miracles rarely arrive when life is convenient. They arrive when hearts are softened, when pride is surrendered, when expectation rises above fear. And I want you to think deeply for a moment about what readiness truly means. Because readiness is not passive wishing. It is active positioning of the soul. It is waking each day, believing God has not abandoned His promises. It is guarding your thoughts against despair. It is nurturing gratitude even when answers have not manifested. And I know there are voices in the world that mock such conviction, voices that reduce faith to naivety, voices that claim miracles belong only to ancient pages. Yet across generations there have been preachers and teachers who ignited hope in those willing to listen, including voices like Jimmy Swaggart, whose fiery proclamation stirred hearts to remember that God's power did not retire with history. And whether you stand in a crowded city or a quiet room at dawn, the truth remains that the divine does not measure geography before moving. He measures willingness. And so I ask you now to examine your willingness. And so I ask you now to examine your willingness, because readiness means letting go of bitterness that anchors you to yesterday. It means forgiving wounds that keep you chained to pain. It means daring to envision joy where sorrow has built its tent. And I know that may sound challenging when reality presses heavily upon you, when finances strain, when relationships fracture, when health falters. But miracles often begin as seeds planted in soil that looks barren. And the miracle you seek may already be germinating beneath hardships you misunderstand. So do not abandon hope simply because you cannot yet perceive growth, because the unseen work of transformation is often the most sacred. And I want you to picture standing on the threshold of change, aware that heaven has not forgotten your name, aware that the same Creator who orchestrates galaxies is attentive to your tears. And this awareness should awaken not arrogance but humility, because readiness also involves reverence, a recognition that you are participating in something greater than personal comfort, something woven into a larger story of redemption and grace. And as you continue walking forward, you must train your spirit to expect interruption, to welcome divine surprises that may alter your path without warning. Because miracles are seldom scheduled according to human convenience. They arrive when purpose aligns with timing. And though you may feel insignificant in the vastness of existence, never underestimate the value of your faith in the eyes of eternity. because one believing heart can transform despair into testimony. Because one believing heart can transform despair, and I urge you today to nurture that belief, to feed it with reflection, to protect it from cynicism, to remind yourself that the waiting season is not wasted but formative, shaping resilience and sharpening trust. And while you may not yet see the evidence of breakthrough, the call remains the same. Prepare your heart, strengthen your hope, steady your focus, because when the moment arrives and the miracle unfolds, you will want to recognize it, not with shock, but with gratitude, not with doubt, but with praise. And the readiness you cultivate today will determine how fully you embrace the blessing tomorrow. So hold fast to conviction, guard your spirit against despair, and step forward with expectation alive within you. Because the journey toward transformation has already begun, and the first step of readiness is believing that what God is about to do in your life is beyond anything you have yet imagined. There comes a point in every journey of faith when anticipation collides with uncertainty, when the confidence you felt begins to waver under the weight of delay. And it is precisely at that intersection where many people turn back, not because they lack belief entirely, but because the silence between promise and fulfillment can feel heavier than any burden they have carried before. And if you have reached that moment, then I want you to remain here with steady attention, because this is where the story deepens. This is where the suspense of the soul unfolds, where you begin to question whether what you sensed was real or only the echo of desire. Yet understand this truth clearly. The testing of patience is not evidence of abandonment, but the shaping of endurance. And endurance is the vessel that can hold the miracle when it finally arrives, because without strength of spirit, blessings can overwhelm rather than uplift. And perhaps you have prayed with tears and waited with expectation, only to find yourself still standing in the same circumstances, still wrestling with the same fears, still facing the same unanswered questions, and doubt whispers that nothing will change. That hope is foolish, that nothing will change. That hope is foolish. That readiness was misplaced, but that whisper is not the final voice over your destiny. It is merely the echo of human limitation, attempting to define divine capability. And I urge you to resist surrendering to that narrative, because the tension you feel right now may be the very indicator that something significant is drawing closer, much like the stillness before a storm breaks across the sky. And as you reflect in this hour, you must also confront the hidden barriers within yourself, the quiet habits of thought that sabotage trust, the fears that persuade you to lower expectations so disappointment cannot reach you. And though such defenses appear protective, they quietly distance you from the fullness of faith, and readiness cannot flourish in a guarded heart. So you must release the instinct to control outcomes and instead cultivate the courage to stand vulnerable before the unknown, believing that what is unfolding serves a purpose beyond immediate comprehension. Because miracles do not simply alter circumstances, they transform perspective, and sometimes that transformation requires walking through confusion so clarity can emerge with greater depth. And I want you to consider the countless individuals who have stood at this crossroads before you. People who felt the same uncertainty, people who wondered whether heaven had turned silent, yet later discovered that what seemed like delay was preparation unfolding with precision. And you too are part of that lineage of seekers. You too are positioned within a narrative larger than frustration can reveal. And even now, as you continue listening, I want you to sense the tension rising in your own spirit, because somewhere within you there remains a question unresolved, a fear unspoken, a longing that has not yet been satisfied. And this is where suspense grows, because you stand between what has been and what could be, between evidence and expectation, and it is tempting to retreat into resignation, to decide that perhaps miracles belong to others, perhaps your story is meant to remain ordinary, yet such thinking ignores the profound truth that divine possibility does not discriminate according to human comparison. And the same grace that has lifted others is present for you, but grace often requires participation, requiring persistence in prayer, steadiness in character, humility in conduct, and the willingness to believe even when circumstances seem unchanged. And I know the world trains you to demand instant outcomes, yet faith invites you into deeper patience, into the recognition that unseen movements may be taking place beyond perception. And consider this carefully. What if the very challenge confronting you now is not an obstacle, but the final refinement before breakthrough? What if the struggle you wish would vanish is instead positioning you to recognize the miracle when it arrives? Because without contrast, light cannot be appreciated. Without hardship, restoration cannot be treasured. And while suspense can feel unsettling, it is also sacred, for it keeps your spirit attentive, watchful, alert to subtle shifts that signal transformation. And as this tension builds, I encourage you not to lose heart, but to strengthen awareness, to notice the quiet changes within your mindset, the gradual resilience growing inside you, because miracles often begin internally before they manifest externally. And when they do emerge, they carry meaning shaped by every moment of waiting that preceded them. And so remain steadfast even when answers seem distant. Remain grounded when emotions fluctuate. Remain hopeful when evidence appears scarce, because the chapter you are living right now is not the conclusion, but the unfolding middle of a story still guided by purpose. And though uncertainty surrounds you, I want you to stand in it with courage rather than fear, because suspense is not designed to break you. It is designed to stretch your capacity to trust, and the miracle that approaches will not merely resolve a problem, but reveal the strength you discovered while enduring. And in that revelation, you will understand that every anxious moment, every restless night, every silent prayer was part of the preparation that made you ready to receive what is drawing nearer even now. And now, as this journey of reflection reaches its final movement, I want you to steady your heart and absorb what has been unfolding within you. Because readiness, endurance, and suspense are not isolated experiences, but threads woven together into a tapestry of awakening. And you are standing at a moment where understanding begins to settle like dawn light across the horizon, revealing shapes and meaning that were hidden in darkness. And it is here that you recognize something essential, that the miracle you have been anticipating was never meant to be reduced to spectacle, never meant to be confined to dramatic gestures alone, but intended to reshape the way you see yourself, the way you approach tomorrow, the way you carry hope into spaces that once felt barren. And you must not allow this realization to pass casually by, because awareness of divine movement demands response. It invites gratitude, humility, and renewed commitment. And as you reflect on everything stirring within your spirit, consider how far you have already traveled in thought and perception, how the waiting sharpened your focus, how the tension deepens your trust, how the quiet moments cultivated resilience. And now you begin to understand that miracles often unfold gradually, appearing not as sudden thunder, but as steady transformation, shaping character, restoring courage, guiding direction. And while the world often celebrates only visible change, the sacred truth remains that internal renewal is the foundation upon which lasting blessing is built. And I want you to carry this recognition forward beyond this moment of listening, because inspiration must not end when words fade. It must continue as action expressed through compassion, integrity, and belief. And perhaps you will encounter voices that dismiss such conviction, voices that insist faith is misplaced or optimism unrealistic. Yet his story has repeatedly demonstrated that those who dared to hold conviction shaped outcomes far beyond expectation, and you too possess that potential when you choose persistence over surrender. And as you step into the unfolding days ahead, remember that readiness does not conclude with receiving. It continues with stewardship, with honoring what has been entrusted to you by living responsibly and generously, because miracles are not personal trophies. They are invitations to influence the world with kindness, patience, and understanding. And this perspective anchors you in humility, preventing pride from overshadowing gratitude. And while you may reflect upon teachers and voices that have inspired countless seekers, including the legacy of Jimmy Swaggart spoken of in meaningful reflection as an example of passionate proclamation, you must also recognize that your own journey carries unique significance, that your testimony, your resilience, your faith lived quietly in daily choices contributes to a greater chorus of hope that reaches beyond individual circumstance. And so do not underestimate the impact of walking forward with conviction, because others observing your steadiness may discover courage within themselves. And as this message approaches its closing breath, I want you to anchor your focus firmly in expectation. Not expectation born of entitlement, but expectation grounded in trust. Believing that what lies ahead carries potential shaped by preparation you have embraced. And even if challenges arise again, even if uncertainty revisits your path, you now carry insight forged through reflection, insight reminding you that faith is not fragile, that patience is not weakness, that perseverance is not in vain. And with that understanding, you move beyond passive hope into active living, expressing belief through kindness offered freely, forgiveness granted willingly, gratitude practiced daily. And I urge you not to allow routine to dull this awareness, because miracles thrive where attentiveness remains alive, where hearts remain open to possibility. And as you continue onward from this moment, let each decision reflect readiness cultivated within you. Let each challenge reinforce endurance strengthened within you. Let each success remind you of grace surrounding you, and hold firmly to the conviction that what God is doing in your life extends beyond visible outcomes into eternal significance, shaping legacy, influencing others, nurturing purpose. And with that vision carried forward, I leave you with this closing encouragement to remain steadfast in belief and generous in spirit, and remember always that growth continues long after inspiration is spoken. And as you carry this message with you into the unfolding chapters of your life, I invite you to remain connected and engaged, because shared reflection strengthens collective hope. And so I conclude with this simple note, offered with sincerity and gratitude.